Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. Join me as we have a real-life discussion on how to change your life by changing your thoughts. Remember, question everything, trust yourself, and find your truth. Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. My name is Sloan Fremont, and I'm your host. This is a show where we talk about how to change our lives by changing our thoughts. That has been the core of what I've talked about over the past 5 years on this show. That is what I have learned about myself in my own life that is actually what's going on in my head that's holding me back from the things that I want. And I have control over that. I have more control over that than I was ever led to believe. And this show, we explore that. We explore different ways to do that. We explore how to really get out of our own heads and start to form new perspectives, and also really reminding ourselves on every episode that we don't have to believe everything we think. We actually do not have to believe everything we think. So this week, I'm excited to bring you two guests. I have Chris Gorell and Candice Sogran, and they're authors of the book, Typhoon Honey, The Only Way Out is Through. I absolutely love this book. I recommend anybody who's listening, I recommend right now that you go get this book, because it is really everything in this book is what we've talked about on the show for the past 5 years. But it's written in a way that's very easy to understand, very practical, and just and there's exercises in there to reinforce what they talk about. And I just absolutely love this book. So I'm excited to bring them to you this week so we can really dig into what they talk about in the book, and really that concept of the only way out is through. I mean, I know a lot of times in the work that we talk about on the show, maybe in things that you're doing in your own life, like we just want to skip to the good part, right? We just want to skip to the part where everything is figured out and we're in that place that we want to be. But unfortunately, that is not how the world works, that we actually have to go through things in order to get to the other side. So this book explores that, and I can't wait to get to the conversation with Chris and Candice today. Before we do that, I just want to remind you of a couple things. First off, if we are not connected on social media, please be sure to scroll down to the bottom of this, wherever you're watching this on, if you're watching the video or if you're listening to the podcast, go to the description, and the links for all of my social media are in the show notes description. So please connect with me on there. I'd love to get to know you more. I'd love to hear your feedback on any of these episodes. I'd also love to know any questions you have or anything that you would like me to bring up on some upcoming episodes. So please be sure and do that. If you have to, pause the video right now and go down there and let's get connected. The second thing I want to remind you of is my Create What You Speak Academy. This is where I've taken the concepts that I talk about in the show, and I've created various courses, journals, and just different ways that you can really interact with yourself in order to bring these concepts to life in your world, to be able to change your world, to be able to think about what it is that you want and put together a plan for yourself to get you there. So I have probably in the next couple months, I'm going to be launching a new course. I don't want to give too much away right now because I don't have the title quite ironed out yet, but it's going to be something that I know you're going to want. It's going to be really a focused way to determine what it is you want in your life and go about how to get that. And it's going to help you expand your thinking, think bigger, and really, really narrow down what it is that you want. And I'm going to give you all the tools to do that. So in order to get notified of this, please go to my website, sloanfremont.com. And on the right-hand side, there's an opt-in box where you can put your email in so you get on my newsletter list. And for those who are subscribed to my newsletter, you're going to be the first to know about the course, and you're going to be the first to get the lowest price for this course. So please be sure to go to sloanfremont.com, click on the box on the right-hand side, enter your email address, click send, and there you go. And you're on my newsletter list, and you'll be the first to be notified of that. So pause the video, pause the podcast, get signed up, and then come back, and I'm going to get rolling with the interview with Chris and Candice. I want to welcome today Chris Gorell and Candice Sogran, authors of the book, Typhoon Honey, The Only Way Out is Through. This book shows how the science and psychology of transformation actually works, and that it isn't woo-woo or magic. Well, we love woo-woo and magic on the show, but we also love practicality. So Chris and Candice, I want to welcome you to the show today.
Thanks, Sloan.
Great to meet you, Sloan.
Yeah, so let's start out maybe by doing some introductions. We'll start maybe with Chris, and then we'll move to Candice, and we'll get into the book and get going.
So my name is Chris Garrell. I'm a retired executive leadership coach. I've been doing that for about 40 years of my professional life, and have retired to dedicate myself to writing. And so it's kind of my hobby turned career now. So my background is psychology and theology, and kind of blend the two together, and bring a lot of different points of view from those different disciplines into what I do with individuals as a coach.
And Chris says that he's in retirement, but I keep trying to pull him out of retirement to be my executive coach. I'll introduce myself quickly. My name is Candice Sogran. I am an attorney by trade and training. I lead an executive sales team for a high growth startup company, technology company. And so I really come at all of this from the business perspective, from the ROI perspective. You'll probably hear that in this conversation today. But I fell into transformation 4 years ago because I was told I wasn't very emotionally intelligent by my boss. And so I went to a training to learn how to be more emotionally intelligent. And it really changed my life, changed my entire family, changed the way that I look at the world, and super grateful for these lessons. And that's why I wanted to pass them on along with Chris.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, I absolutely loved your book, Typhoon Honey. I mean, I don't know if you can see on here, but I have pretty much almost every page. And as you look through, it's highlighted. There was so much in here that, as I said in the intro, that it isn't woo woo or magic, because sometimes when we get into transformational work, it can go down that path. And some people get maybe, they're not interested in that, or it gets too far down a path that maybe they're not comfortable with. But what I loved about your book was the practicality of it, how it was very, you explained it in a lot of ways that I never heard it before, that helped me understand these topics differently, which is one of the things I really appreciated about it. But before we get too far into it, I want to talk about the title, Typhoon Honey. Can you tell us where that came from?
Yes, I would love to tell you. So when Chris and I were writing the book, I was telling him about, I went on a 6-month honeymoon when I got married. And this was part of living a life by design. And so my husband and I traveled the world. We went to 13 countries in 6 months. And one of those countries was Vietnam. And we had a tour guide who took us through the Cu Chi tunnels and really walked us through the Vietnamese perspective of the Vietnam War, which was really powerful and moving, slightly embarrassing as an American. And this tour guide, though, was hilarious. He was the happiest, smallest, ball of fire. And his name was Typhoon Honey. And he was just so full of joy and love and just exuding it from his pores. And I went up to him and I said, how can you do this? How can you do this every day? Take us through one of the most painful moments in Vietnamese history with Americans. And he said, that wasn't you. He said, you're an American, you're an amazing human. And I just saw love. I saw overcoming. I saw all of the things that inspire me about humanity in this person. And so I wanted to dedicate this to Typhoon Honey. Chris then has another additional meaning that we've added to it, but that's where it started.
Well, the additional meaning is, it's the most powerful force on the planet is a typhoon. They're bigger than hurricanes. They're bigger than any other force. They're massive. And at the same time, honey is one of the oldest foods and the purest food. It's the only food that we know that does not spoil, doesn't mold. And so there's this juxtaposition of power and purity, that stuck together too. And so I just loved his name. And we also, glommed on to the meanings behind the two words, typhoon and honey. So it really kind of, it stands for a whole bunch of stuff, but most importantly, I think it is, Typhoon Honey is the kind of person who is so powerful that you have no other choice than to be joyful around him. And so when we talk about transformation, we're really talking about getting to a state where you're infectious. Your joy, your life, the way you live, the power that you exude in manifesting what you manifest is contagious, and other people want what you have. And so it really stands for that.
Yeah, well, I love that. I don't know. Obviously, I didn't meet Typhoon Honey, but I feel like I did after reading the book because the way it's explained in here, and I just absolutely love that. So let's get into a little bit more about the book. So you talk at the beginning of the book about how everything is connected, and you talk about the laws of the universe. What do you think is the biggest misconception people have about how everything is connected and how the laws of the universe fit together?
In 25 words or less, right?
Exactly. We've only got an hour, so let's go.
Right. Oh man, there's so many, if we unbundle that misconception around how things are connected, we grow up in a society, and most Western cultures, we grow up thinking of ourselves as individual, as separate from each other. In Eastern societies, that's not so much the case. They learn unity, they learn interconnectivity, yin and yang, and how things are intertwined together. In sub-Saharan Africa, they learn Ubuntu, and so there are many places on the planet where people learn the interconnectivity of everything and all life. But we, the people we talk to most often, grow up with this myth of individuation, of I am separate from you. And I think that's the biggest thing that gets in the way a lot of times of our transformational journey, is that we see ourselves as separate and distinct rather than so totally intertwined. I am so much a part of Candice and she of me that we're like twin brother and sisters that never had the same parents, but we've become intertwined in our work together.
Yeah, I really love that reminder. I've talked about that on the show a lot, about that separation and feeling alone. For myself personally, it was so painful for me. I couldn't even say the word alone for the longest time without crying, because that's how separated I had led myself to believe that I was from everything. And just over even I'd say the past couple of months, my dad passed away very unexpectedly a couple of months ago. And I almost feel like it wasn't till then that I realized that, because I had put all these labels on myself, right? I've never been married. I'm single. So there's something wrong with me, right? Wrong in quotes, right? And what I realized after going through all this that I went through with my dad and just my own journey, that it wasn't the labels that I was putting on myself that were causing the pain. It was the separation I was leading myself to believe, that I was alone, and that because of that, there was something wrong with me, or that I was never going to get out of that space, or, all of these emotions that came with that. And that remembrance that we're not alone, that we're all connected. It's something I try to talk about on the show, because it needs to be reminded, because for me, that it wasn't just, oh, you're separate. There were so many layers underneath that I didn't understand played into that.
It's not just also that, I feel like I'm wrong or I'm not worthy, but it's also like I had the opposite perspective before coming into this work, which was no one else can be trusted. I had told myself a story my entire life that people can't be trusted, so I have to do everything myself. Yeah. And so I ended up feeling very alone and frustrated and not very well liked. And Chris, along with many others, taught me, that one of the things we talk about a lot in the book is fractals, and the idea that there's this repeating behavior. And so if I inherently believe that I am alone and no one else can be trusted, that is the world I'm going to create for myself. Right. And so the science that Chris brings into this was so helpful, because it gave me a framework with which to understand that I've been creating my own environment of lack of trust.
Right. And it puts the control back to you. It helps you feel, okay, now I can take control and change the situation. I'm not a quote victim of the situation.
And something you mentioned, Sloan, in the way you describe that is something that's very important in the work that we do in transformation, and that is separating the physical historical events from the story about those events. Right. We often deal with people who've been traumatized in their youth. They were abused by a parent, or sexually assaulted, or whatever. That's a reality. But what we make up about who I am as trash, or who I am as unworthy, or who, whatever that is, that's the story and the interpretation that we make up about it. And what transformation works on is, we can't change history, no, but we can change your interpretation that you made about yourself and you made about the world, that you're separate and nobody can be trusted, or, that's all an interpretation. And if you made up the interpretation in the first place, you can change that interpretation and make it serve you in a way that's much more powerful. So the work of transformation isn't ignoring history or ignoring reality. It's altering